Zion Williamson has been cleared to play without restrictions. Pelicans Executive VP of Basketball Operations David Griffin was asked on the Ryan Russillo podcast about offering Zion a max extension.
I think it's not a big decision. It's a pretty easy decision. The kid's historically good when he plays. This is a max player. That's easy. What becomes significant as a team that's a small market team and a team that can't make mistakes in terms of injuries over time, you have to indemnify yourself in some way for that, and that's fine. But the decision of whether or not this is a max player is a very easy one.
Windy, what's your reaction to that sound?
Well, as my wife, my beloved wife, who's a lawyer, might say, calling him a max player is accurate but not true. Because what David Griffin is saying there is we're going to give him a max contract, but we don't want to guarantee the whole thing. Well, with all due respect to the distinguished gentleman from New Orleans, that is not a max contract. And that is why this is going to be a negotiation. When Zion Williamson came out at the end of the season and said, I'll sign an extension, he was talking about signing a fully guaranteed extension. When David Griffin says it's easy to decide he's a max player, yeah, you'll offer him max money, but how much of it is going to be guaranteed? Now, I think there is a medium in there that these sides are going to work this out. Zion Williamson is a highly valued player. He can be guaranteed a huge sum of money, 9 figures, but protect the Pelicans in case of more long-term injury. And I think they can find that. But I do not think we should assume that this is going to be simple, as both Zion and Griff kind of are implying.
Hey, Wendy, can I ask you a question?
Please.
Okay, so say, for instance, I don't know, something happened to your voice, right? And you weren't able to talk like you can talk now. At a young age, right? Say you started off, 22 in the business at a young age, and you weren't able to talk. Would you start off taking a non-guaranteed contract?
That's what he's saying. No. He's saying David Griffin is saying he's a max contract, but who ever heard of a non-guaranteed number in the NBA?
On a max rookie contract. That means he will have to take less every single contract going forward. It just doesn't stop here. If he agrees to that, every team from the future.
Bev, you just signed a 1-year extension. Midway through this season, you signed a 1-year contract extension. That money is guaranteed. If I had given you an extension, if I was the Timberwolves and said, hey, we want to give you an extension that's not guaranteed, is that really an extension? No, it is not.
He's pointing out Griffin's...
it's a nice thing you can announce it,
So Wendy, you're pointing
really
out
depends,
that David Griffin it's BS. When he says, oh, yes, he's definitely a max contract player, if you're not offering him a fully guaranteed contract, you're not really saying he's a max contract player, right? That's
right.
Wendy,
so
that's what you're saying.
This has happened before. This has happened before. It happened with Joel Embiid when he was coming off his rookie deal with Philadelphia. They gave him a contract that would be the max if he was able to play enough games and it hit some certain triggers. And guess what? He did. It hit the triggers, and the non-guaranteed portion of the deal became guaranteed. That is the basis for what they're doing here. The only question is Zion willing to sign a contract that is not fully guaranteed? It's still going to be a lot guaranteed. He's still going to be filthy rich. But that's the thing we're going to find out come June.
Pat, would you sign it if you were him?
No, not at this age. If it's not full guaranteed, I'm not. No, I have a lot to prove anyway.
Therefore, David Griffin's talking out of both sides of his mouth when he says he's definitely a max contract player. It's accurate but not true. I understand it.
No, you said that. I didn't say that about David Griffin. I said that at his age, he has a lot to prove. He's been sitting out a long time. I'm pretty sure he's going to be healthy this upcoming season. Play basketball, baby.
Okay, if you give Zion a max contract, a real max contract, can you win a championship because that's a lot of your resources that you can't spend other places. Can they win a championship giving him a max contract?
First off, he deserves a max contract.
Okay.
Obviously, you can't control injuries. His percentages are close to Shaq. Like some crazy stuff, like 60%.
When he's on the
so he's a max player. You have to give him his money. But a championship, let's not get too crazy. Come on, it's his first season. Let him get his legs up under him. Let him get.
Pat Beverley, GM.
Ain't nobody winning no championship,
Pat
man.
GM. You're gonna give Zion a max deal. He's gonna be there through year 7 at least, right? Do you believe that with him and what else they have, they got some stuff. That in that time frame they could possibly win a championship.
A championship?
Yes, if you give Zion a max contract. Can he be the best player on a championship team one day?
A championship? I don't even know how they look in the playoffs yet. They just won a play-in game. They lost first round. We lost first round. But a championship, I No one's on the roster has been to the Western Conference Finals, so a championship is a stretch. I don't know what might happen in the future.
I'm jumping ahead.
No. You're in a time capsule, way ahead.
But that's what, Windy, that's what GMs ultimately have to ask, right? If I devote those resources to this player, given injury history, level of performance, everything, do I believe in that time frame we can win a title?
Yes, if he stays healthy, but I'll just say this. It's very hard to win a title without being a luxury taxpayer. The Bucks were right at the line. The Celtics were right at the line. The Pelicans they're one of two franchises that have never paid the luxury tax. So will they commit to keeping this team together for the long haul? Is ownership willing to spend a great deal? That, to me, is just as important as whether or not this team can grow together. And in both situations, the answer is we'll see.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.